Saint Peter was an apostle of Jesus Christ. His original name was Simeon or Simon. The Christian Church recognizes him as the leader of the 12 disciples, and the Roman Catholic Church recognizes him as the first of its unbroken succession of popes. Peter was a Jewish fisherman who was called to be a disciple of Jesus at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. Peter's family was originally from Bethsaida in Galilee, but during the time of Jesus' ministry, Peter lived in Capernaum, a place at the northwest end of the Sea of Galilee, where he and his brother Andrew were partners as fishermen with St. James and St. John, the sons of Zebedee. There are plenty of stories about Peter in the Bible. Peter usually seems to be the spokesman of all the apostles. Jesus seems to have given him a considerable amount of authority as well. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus encouraged Peter to attempt to walk on water when he, Peter, saw Jesus do so. Jesus knew, after all, that Peter would be the leader of his church. He changed his name from Simon to the name Cephas, from the Aramaic kepa, rock. Peter comes from the Greek word Petros, which means rock. Peter believed that Jesus was the Son of God and didn't hesitate to say so. From the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus saith to them, "But whom do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered and said, "Thou art Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answering said to him, "Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood hath not revealed it to thee, but my Father who is in heaven. And I say to thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give to thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt bind upon earth, it shall be bound also in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose upon earth, it shall be loosed also in heaven." Peter is also famous for being the apostle who denied Jesus 3 times, despite insisting that he would never do so. Simon Peter saith to him, "Lord, whither goest thou?" Jesus answered, "Whither I go, thou canst not follow me now, but thou shalt follow hereafter." Peter saith to him, "Why cannot I follow thee now? I will lay down my life for thee." Jesus answered him, "Wilt thou lay down thy life for me? Amen, amen, I say to thee, the cock shall not crow till thou deny me thrice." The maid therefore that was portress saith to Peter, "Art thou not also one of this man's disciples?" He saith, "I am not." Now the servants and ministers stood at a fire of coals, because it was cold, and warmed themselves. And with them was Peter also, standing and warming himself. And Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They therefore said to him, "Art thou also not one of his disciples?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of the servants of the high priest, a kinsman to him whose ear Peter cut off, saith to him, "Did I not see thee in the garden with him?" Again therefore Peter denied, and immediately the cock crew. This story of Peter is an important one for us to remember. Jesus knows our every weakness. He knows what we are going to do and into what temptation we shall fall. Yet he forgives us wholeheartedly when we are truly sorry for giving in to our weaknesses. Despite Peter's momentary failing, Jesus still made him the head of the church, because Jesus knew that in his heart Peter truly loved him and would guide his flock. When therefore they had dined, Jesus saith to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, lovest thou me more than these?" He saith to him, "Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee." He saith to him, "Feed my lambs." He saith to him again, Simon, son of John, lovest thou me? He saith to him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He saith to him, Feed my lambs. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved, because he had said to him the third time, Lovest thou me? And he said to him, Lord, thou knowest all things, thou knowest that I love thee. He said to him, Feed my sheep. Peter played an extremely important role in the early Christian community. He was the one who presided over the election that chose Matthias to be an apostle, to take the place of Judas Iscariot, who had betrayed Christ and who later committed suicide. Peter was the first apostle to speak at Pentecost, when the church began to spread the good news to the world. The Jewish religious court, the Sanhedrin, also considered Peter the leader of the apostles, and he was the one who served as its spokesperson there. He also was judge in the internal issues of the early church, and he was the first apostle to perform miracles in Jesus' name. There are 2 short books by Peter in the New Testament. These books are about 4 or 5 chapters each, and are letters from himself to the early Christian communities. Surprisingly, for someone who occupied such an important role in the early church, we know very little about Peter's death. His death is alluded to in the Gospel of John, when Jesus says, Amen, amen, I say to thee, when thou wast younger, thou didst gird thyself, and didst walk where thou wouldst. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, and lead thee whither thou wouldst not. And this he said, signifying by what death he should glorify God. The Bible, however, has nothing more on the subject. Tradition holds that Peter was put to death in Rome in the year 64, a little after the Great Fire, for which the Emperor Nero blamed the Christians. It is also a traditionally held belief that Peter was crucified upside down on the Vatican Hill at his request, as he felt unworthy to have the same death as Jesus. After St. Peter's death, St. Linus went on to become the first Roman Pope of the Catholic Church. The line of succession from St. Linus is unbroken and dates back to 64 AD. It is widely believed that Peter was buried somewhere near the Vatican, as the Roman cleric Gaius speaks of the Vatican shrine and the founders of the church. In 1950, human bones were discovered beneath the altar of St. Peter's Basilica, which led to many claiming they belonged to St. Peter. However, in 1953, an excavation found what was purported to be St. Peter's tomb in Jerusalem, bearing his previous name Simon, as well as the tombs of the other apostles, and Mary and Jesus. But in the 1960s, the discarded debris from the excavation beneath St. Peter's Basilica was re-examined, and the bones were identified as that of a human male. This discovery led to Pope Paul VI announcing that they were likely to belong to the Apostle Peter. He did this in the year 1968. St. Peter's feast day is June 29th, which he shares with St. Paul. He is also honored on the 22nd of February and on November 18th. He is usually portrayed as an elderly man holding a key and a book. He is the patron saint of popes, fishermen, locksmiths, and the city of Rome. After all the heaviness, here's something interesting. If you go to Israel, you can eat a fish called St. Peter's fish. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus tells Peter to go fishing in the Sea of Galilee, and the first fish that he caught would have a silver coin in it, which Peter could use to pay the tax. Peter followed Jesus' instructions, And indeed, the first fish he caught did have a silver coin in its mouth. According to the legend, the fish Peter caught was a kind of tilapia, which is now happily exploited by restaurants all around the Sea of Galilee to make for a very delicious meal, as we can attest. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a like. We hope that you will subscribe to our channel. And thanks so much for watching. God bless you.